two things before I begin my story. Number one, and this is, I know it's going to be a surprise to you, but I have an accent. And it comes, it really comes out when I'm nervous, and also when I'm nervous, I tend to change the gender of the people I'm talking about. So instead of saying grandmother, I say grandfather, it's grandmother. So just pretend you understand what I'm talking about and just laugh. It's okay. The second one is, I'm going to say something, I'm going to give you cultural dispensation. And what that means is that if I say something about anything that you think it's funny, you have my permission to laugh. I'm not very funny, my kids can tell you, but if you think it's funny, I talk a lot about my family and my culture, laugh. It's okay, I laugh at them. Okay, here I go. I don't know about you, I don't see myself as a coward. Yes, I'm afraid of thunder and spiders and dentists. I am absolutely terrified of flying. It breaks my nerves. But nothing makes me more afraid in this world than words. And which is funny because I like to tell stories. And maybe because I like telling stories is the reason why I'm so afraid of words, because I know the power that they can have over people. But there's one specific expression that just terrifies me, and that is the expression, I'm okay. Think about it. Nobody ever uses the words, I'm okay, unless something really bad happened to them, or something bad is about to happen to them. Nobody ever says, I'm okay, just like, oh, I'm okay. No, right? But I wasn't always like that. I actually have a time, a day, and a specific hour of the day when I became terrified of these words. It was September, not 11, but 1985, 6 o'clock in the morning. My family and I used to live on a very small town, and my dad used to work for Valley National Bank. Ooh, I know. And my dad had to travel from time to time, an hour, to get to the airport because he actually had to do a lot of business trips for Valley National Bank. So this specific time, like I said the night before, my dad had to go to Mexico City, and he was like ever so happy because he was going to stay in this wonderful, very old hotel, and it was very hard to score a reservation in that hotel. And lo and behold, I was a teenager in middle school back then, and I'm not going to tell you how old I was because now you can count. I'm old. And my mom, first time ever, decided to make the 1-hour trip to the airport, drop him off, and then continue for 5 hours and stay the weekend with my grandma, just because. Now, I don't know how much you know about Mexican moms. 2 teenage girls, mom going somewhere else, that never happens, ever. My sister and I were free. We could eat anything from all of the breakfast, lunches, and dinners that my mom left frozen at the fridge. We could stay until 9 o'clock at night watching TV at my uncle's house, which was right next door to my house. And we could go to bed without, sleeping without my parents. Just the lady that was staying and sleeping with us, right? But we were free. We were free. And we were so naive. The next morning, September 19, 1985, my sister and I decided that we were going to stay 10 more minutes over 6 o'clock in the morning because my mom wasn't there to hurry us up. And it seemed like my mom knew that was going to happen because the phone rang exactly at that moment. Now, for those of you who have a mom, when their phone rings, you know who it is. So my sister jumped and ran to the bathroom, and I jumped to pick up the phone. Now, I come from the generation where the phone actually went on the wall, not in your purse. You wanted to take the phone somewhere, you actually had to have this really long cord and drag it, right? So I went to pick up the phone, and my mom had these weird questions. The first thing she said, I picked up the phone and I said, "Hi, Mom," and she said, "Are you okay?" "Yes, we're okay." "Have you talked to anybody?" "It's 6 o'clock in the morning, Mom. Who are we going to talk to?" "Okay. Have you turned on the TV?" "No." "Okay. Before you talk to anybody, before you turn on the TV, I want you to know I have just talked to your dad and he's okay." Now let me tell you, when you're in middle school, your mom is always wrong about everything. But she's not a liar. So I didn't think twice of what she was saying to me. It's like, okay. She says, "Okay, now I need to talk to your sister, put her on the phone." Long cord, right? So after I give the phone to my sister, who's in the bathroom taking a shower, I start getting ready. Lo and behold, here comes my sister, completely naked, still, soap suds everywhere, and turns on the TV. And I turn around and I look at the TV, and there it is. Mexico City had just had the largest earthquake in history. 10,000 people were dead. 30,000 people were disappeared. And there were more than 100,000 people homeless. As my sister and I were wondering what was happening and if my dad was okay, and we were sharing the name of the hotel, here comes these images of this completely obliterated, destroyed hotel with the signs on the sides. That was my dad's hotel. I looked at it, and then I said, "Oh, my mom said my mom is okay," so I just went and just got ready. We got on the car, and my uncle drove us to school. My uncle said, "Hey, do you know anything about your dad?" And I said, "Yeah, my mom called us, and she said that my dad is okay." We were absolutely fine. And my uncle didn't ask any other questions. Now, it's funny, because I didn't think twice about it, but as we were driving to school, my uncle turns on the radio, and they're giving all of this information about the earthquake, how all communications are lost, how there's no airplanes going in and out, how they're completely incommunicated, and I'm just listening, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I did not do my homework, right? We get to school, and I don't know if you have ever lived in a small town, but I'm going to tell you a little secret. We are all up in each other's business. Everybody knew where my dad was at. So everybody kept asking, like, "Have you heard from your dad? Is he okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, my dad is fine. My mom just talked to him this morning, and my dad is fine." And as the day is going by, you know how when there's big events, people turn on the TVs, the tubes? You're laughing because you're my generation, you know what I'm talking about. My sister's mood just became somber. There was something about her, and I couldn't quite pinpoint what that was. 3 o'clock comes along, my uncle picks us up, and takes us to the house, and I open the door, and lo and behold, there is my mother in the kitchen with my grandma, having the merriest of times. And we walk towards the kitchen, and my mom comes to us and sits us down, and she hugs us and she says, "I know you've seen the TV, don't worry about it. I just talked to your dad, he says he's fine. Cut the crap, Mom." And I turn around, and my sister, my goody-goody two-shoe sister, whose worst insult is, "Gosh and darn it," when she's really angry at me, is telling my mother to cut the crap. I'm looking at my sister, not believing this behavior. I've never seen it before. And my sister just keeps saying things. And my sister's like, cut it out, Mom. There's no way you were able to talk to my dad. There's no communications with Mexico City. How did you talk to him? I've seen the hotel. He's dead. And you don't want to tell us. We're orphans, and you don't want to tell us. What is going to happen to us? And at that moment, my mom just, in this house, we are okay. We're going to go to school. We're going to eat. We're going to do our homework. We're going to clean the house. Because in this house, we're okay. We're going to put one foot in front of the other, whether we like it or not, because we're okay. It wasn't until that moment that realization came upon me. Mothers can lie too. At that moment, I started asking my mom, and I didn't even realize that the words were coming out of my mouth. I asked her, until when? Until when are we okay? And it was then that my grandmother sat next to me, and she hugged me, and she said, we're going to be okay until we're not okay anymore. So I'm looking at my grandmother, and I asked, well, what happens then? And my grandmother said, in the moment where we're not okay anymore, we're going to let all of the air out of our lungs and all of the tears out of our eyes. And right after that, we're going to plaster the biggest, fakest smile that you can in your face, and you're going to keep it there until that smile is not fake anymore. And here I am looking at this woman who lost her husband when she was very young, and who was able only to raise 12 of her 18 children. She knows about things. That was that. So for the next 5 days, we woke up, we got ready, we went to school, we came back, we did homework. Now, to tell you the next part of the story, I have to explain a little bit about Mexican culture, okay? In the Mexican culture, there's two events that I knew of that involved food. One of them is weddings, quinceañeras, sweet 16s, and baptisms. And those are the events where you dressed up really nice, and you go to these big parties, and they have the barbacoa and this big, delicious food. Those are the events where you actually bring your good Tupperware, because you have to bring food back for those who didn't go, right? Then there's these other events, when somebody's sick, when somebody passes away, where you make as much food as possible to take to the home of the person who's suffering, because you don't want them to suffer about cooking as well, right? Well, I'm going to tell you that during those 5 days, a third category emerged, and I wasn't even aware of it. Every day, friends and family kept showing at the house at 6 o'clock in the morning with raw stuff, with raw turkey, crab, all of this amazing raw food. And they came with the dumbest of excuses. They would say, you know what, I was defrosting the fridge. This is September, people. And we forgot that we had the turkey for Thanksgiving, so we decided, it's going to go to waste, so why not bring it to you so you can cook it? And my mom would say, yes. So for 5 days, my mom cooked all of these huge, elaborate meals. She didn't have to buy a thing. They would bring everything. So we would go to school, and they'd come back home, and then we would have to clean up the house. I'm telling you, during those 5 days, my house was the cleanest house in the block because people were coming. There was this turkey. It must have been defrosting season because they brought so much food to cook. Then family and friends would come and eat, and then they would stay there, and we would laugh and play loteria. I'm not explaining that, it's just Mexican bingo, bear with me. And we would have the merriest of times. That's all we did. And people would leave at the wee hours of the morning. And some of those days were actually school days. And my mom would wait for everybody to leave to start cleaning up the kitchen and prepare for the next day, and we were still expected to go to school. It wasn't until later that I realized that by the end of the day, when people left, we were so tired of all of the cleaning, the cooking, and attending to the visits, and the dressing up and all of those things, that we didn't get the opportunity to turn on the TV or read a single newspaper. We would do this. We actually did this for 5 days, right? At the dawn of the 6th day, we heard this very soft knock at the door. My mom it was soft enough to wake up every single, person in the house. We were all sleepless. My mom came to my room, and then she said, "Whatever happens, I want you to stay here. I'll come and get you." I don't know what my mom was expecting to see or hear, but she sure did not want us there. So of course we all followed right along. And there in the door is this guy, an employee of the bank, who's holding, I'm going to say a fax because nobody's going to know what a telex is. So my mom grabs the fax, and she's trying to read it, but her hands are trembling, right? And she looks at it, and she looks at it, and her knees bend, and she crumbles to the floor. And that's the moment where I started thinking, this is it. This is the moment where I'm going to have to let all of the air out of my lungs and all of the tears out of my eyes. My sister grabs the fax from my mom and starts reading it. And those 10 words, I am never going to forget. I'm okay. I love you. I lost my wallet. Dad. My kids laugh because I take after him. I was never the same after that event. Something changed. My mom says that I turned into a veritable toughie because I don't break easily. Many years later, I did end up losing my father. I had 2 children, one of them in less than favorable circumstances. And I actually had the opportunity to fly all the way to Korea just to try the food at Korea because this is a country that I fell in love with, and I wanted to be there, even though I'm terrified of airplanes. But I've never had to shed a single tear. And that is because in my mind, whenever I face this horrible, difficult situation, all I keep doing in my brain is thinking, I'm okay. For the next 5 minutes, I'm going to smile, and I'm going to be okay.